College is a time of unexpected encounters and surprising connections, and my story is no different. I never thought that struggling in my organic chemistry lab would lead to one of the most meaningful relationships of my life. But sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. Let me take you back to my junior year at Westlake University, where I was barely keeping my head above water in a notoriously difficult pre-med course. The lab component of organic chemistry was particularly challenging for me. Between balancing equations, measuring precise amounts of chemicals, and trying not to accidentally create something explosive, I was constantly on edge. The 3-hour lab sessions felt like marathons, and I'd leave each week feeling mentally drained and increasingly convinced that maybe medicine wasn't my calling after all. That's where Alex comes into the picture. As one of the teaching assistants for our lab section, Alex had a reputation for being both brilliant and approachable, a rare combination in the competitive science department. From the first day of class, I noticed how different Alex was from the other TAs. While most seemed perpetually stressed and somewhat impatient with students who didn't immediately grasp concepts, Alex had this calm, reassuring presence that immediately put everyone at ease. Alex was tall with wavy brown hair that was always slightly messy, as if running hands through it while contemplating complex molecular structures was a regular habit. There was something captivating about the way Alex's eyes lit up when explaining reaction mechanisms, making even the most mundane chemical processes sound fascinating. I found myself paying more attention to the animated hand gestures and passionate explanations than to the actual content sometimes, which probably didn't help my grade situation. Now, I should mention that I wasn't out to many people at Westlake. Coming from a conservative hometown, I had spent most of my life carefully navigating my identity, revealing it only to close friends. The science departments weren't exactly known for being the most progressive spaces on campus, so I generally kept my personal life separate from my academic one. But there was something about Alex that made me wonder if maybe there was a shared understanding between us, subtle glances that lingered a moment too long, a certain softness in our interactions that felt different from how Alex treated other students. My academic struggles came to a head during the 6th week of the semester. We were working on a particularly complex synthesis reaction, and I managed to not only mess up my own experiment, but also knock over a rack of test tubes in the process. It wasn't my finest moment, especially with Alex watching from across the lab. After helping me clean up the mess and salvage what we could of the experiment, Alex pulled me aside as the other students were filing out. "You seem to be having a tough time with these concepts," Alex said, but there wasn't any judgment in the tone, just genuine concern. "The material is challenging, but I think you're overthinking it. Would you be interested in some extra help? I have office hours on Thursdays, but they're usually packed. I could meet you at the library on Wednesday evenings if that would work better." I was surprised by the offer and, honestly, a little embarrassed that my struggles were so obvious. But I was also desperate to pass the class, so I agreed to meet at the campus library the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. What I didn't realize then was that this simple decision would change the trajectory of not just my academic career, but my personal life as well. Our first study session was strictly professional. We sat in one of the small study rooms on the 3rd floor of the library, surrounded by textbooks and molecular models. Alex was patient, breaking down complex reactions into manageable steps and showing me tricks for remembering reaction pathways that weren't in any of the textbooks. For the first time since the course began, I actually felt like I was understanding the material rather than just memorizing steps. "The thing about organic chemistry," Alex explained, "is that it's really a lot like cooking. There are basic principles, and once you understand those, you can predict how molecules will behave in different situations. It's not about memorizing every possible reaction. It's about understanding the patterns." This cooking analogy clicked for me in a way that hours of textbook reading hadn't. By the end of our 2-hour session, I felt more confident about the material than I had all semester. As we were packing up our things, I impulsively asked if we could meet again the following week. Alex smiled, a warm, genuine smile that created the slightest dimple in the left cheek, and agreed without hesitation. Our weekly study sessions quickly became the highlight of my week. We'd start with chemistry, but as the weeks progressed, our conversations began to drift toward other topics. I learned that Alex had initially planned to go to medical school too, but had fallen in love with research during an undergraduate internship. I shared my doubts about my chosen career path, confessing that I wasn't sure if I was pursuing medicine for myself or to fulfill my parents' expectations. "That's a common struggle," Alex said during one of our sessions. "But at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with your choices. Your parents love you and want what's best for you, but they don't have to wake up every day and do the job you choose." There was something about the way Alex said this, with such conviction and understanding, that made me feel seen in a way I rarely experienced. Our conversations became increasingly personal, though we both maintained a certain professional boundary. After all, Alex was still my TA, responsible for grading my lab reports and evaluating my performance in class. About a month into our study sessions, I noticed a shift in our dynamic. Alex started bringing coffee for both of us, remembering exactly how I liked mine without having to ask. We'd sit closer together when reviewing problems, shoulders occasionally brushing as we leaned over the same textbook. There were moments when our eyes would meet, and the conversation would momentarily pause, filled with something unspoken but increasingly difficult to ignore. One evening, as we were discussing resonance structures, Alex asked about my weekend plans. The question itself wasn't unusual, but there was a hesitancy in the way it was asked that caught my attention. "Nothing special," I replied. "Probably just catching up on assignments and maybe watching something on Netflix." "What about you?" "There's an exhibition at the Art Museum downtown, contemporary sculptures inspired by scientific concepts." It sounded interesting, and I was thinking of checking it out on Saturday afternoon. Alex paused, then added, "You might enjoy it too, if you're interested in that sort of thing." Was this an invitation? I wasn't sure, and I was too nervous to ask for clarification. Instead, I responded with an ambiguous, "That does sound interesting," and quickly steered the conversation back to chemistry. I spent the rest of the evening overthinking that exchange, wondering if I had missed an opportunity or if I was reading too much into a casual comment. The following week, our study session coincided with a major storm. Thunder rattled the library windows as rain poured down in sheets. When we finished for the evening, Alex noticed me eyeing the downpour with dismay. "Did you walk here?" Alex asked, concern evident in the furrowed brow. I nodded. "My apartment's not far, but I didn't check the weather before heading out. I have my car. Let me drive you home. It's no trouble." The drive to my apartment was quiet but comfortable, with the rain drumming on the roof and the windshield wipers creating a rhythmic backdrop to our occasional comments about the weather and the upcoming lab assignment. When we arrived at my building, I thanked Alex for the ride and was about to dash through the rain when I heard, "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" Not as a study session, just coffee. The question hung in the air between us, and I turned back to see Alex looking uncharacteristically nervous, hands gripping the steering wheel a bit too tightly. This was definitely not about chemistry anymore. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded despite my racing heart. "But aren't there rules about TAs dating students?" Alex smiled slightly. "Technically, yes. But the semester ends in 3 weeks, and then I'm just a graduate student and you're just an undergraduate. If you're willing to wait, I am too." Those 3 weeks were the longest of my life. Our study sessions continued, but there was a new energy to them, a sense of anticipation and possibility that made even the most tedious chemical equations seem exciting. We were more careful about maintaining appropriate boundaries, both aware that we were in a sort of limbo, waiting for the semester to end so we could explore whatever was developing between us without ethical complications. The final lab session arrived, and I submitted my last report with a strange mix of relief and apprehension. As students filed out, celebrating the end of the dreaded organic chemistry lab, Alex caught my eye across the room and gave me a small nod. We had agreed to meet the following day at a coffee shop off campus, our first official non-academic meeting. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, too anxious to sit at home any longer. I chose a table by the window and ordered a latte, watching the door with increasing nervousness as the minutes ticked by. What if this was a mistake? What if the connection I thought we had was just my imagination? What if? My spiral of anxious thoughts was interrupted when Alex walked through the door, looking different in casual clothes rather than the lab coat I was accustomed to seeing. There was a moment of awkwardness as we greeted each other, both suddenly aware that this was unfamiliar territory. "So," Alex said after ordering a coffee and sitting across from me, "no molecules or reaction mechanisms today. Just us." Just us. I echoed, not entirely sure what that meant, but eager to find out. The conversation started slowly, but soon found its rhythm. We talked about our backgrounds. Alex grew up in a small coastal town with parents who were both marine biologists, which explained the passion for science. I shared more about my conservative upbringing and my journey to accepting my identity. When did you know? Alex asked gently. That you were gay? The question wasn't unexpected, but it still made my heart race a little. I think I always knew in some way, but I didn't have the words for it until high school. Even then, I kept it to myself for a long time. What about you? Alex smiled. Similar story, though I was lucky to have supportive parents. Coming out was still scary, but having their support made a huge difference. As we continued talking, the initial awkwardness dissolved completely. We discovered shared interests in obscure sci-fi shows, a mutual love for Thai food, and a similar sense of humor. Hours passed without either of us noticing, until the barista politely informed us they were closing soon. Standing outside the coffee shop, neither of us seemed ready for the day to end. There's a Thai place about 2 blocks from here, Alex suggested. If you're hungry? Dinner extended our conversation well into the evening. By the time we left the restaurant, the streets were quiet, and a comfortable familiarity had settled between us. Alex walked me to my bus stop, and as we waited, there was a moment of silence that felt heavy with possibility. I've been wanting to do this for months, Alex said quietly, then leaned in slowly, giving me plenty of time to step back if I wanted to. I didn't. Our first kiss was gentle and brief, but it confirmed what I had suspected for weeks. There was definitely chemistry between us that had nothing to do with organic compounds. The following weeks were a whirlwind of discovery. We went on proper dates, dinners, movies, hikes in the nearby state park. Each meeting revealed new layers to Alex that I hadn't been able to see in our academic relationship. I learned about the childhood dream of becoming a marine biologist like his parents, the year spent studying abroad in Japan, the collection of vintage science fiction novels that filled an entire bookshelf in Alex's apartment. Our relationship wasn't without challenges. There were raised eyebrows from some faculty members who had seen us together during the semester, though we could honestly say nothing inappropriate had happened while Alex was my TA. Some of my friends were skeptical, warning me about power dynamics and age differences, though at 4 years, the gap wasn't particularly significant. The biggest challenge came when I introduced Alex to my parents during their visit for Parents' Weekend. I had come out to them the previous year, and while they hadn't disowned me, they were still adjusting to the idea. Meeting Alex, seeing us together and witnessing the genuine connection we shared, seemed to help them understand that my sexuality wasn't just an abstract concept, but a fundamental part of who I was and how I experienced love. As my senior year progressed, our relationship deepened. Alex supported me through my MCAD preparation and medical school applications, never pressuring me, but helping me clarify what I truly wanted. In turn, I cheered Alex through the stressful process of completing a dissertation and applying for postdoctoral positions. We made decisions together, considering each other's careers and aspirations. When I was accepted to a medical school in the same city where Alex had been offered a promising postdoc position, it felt like the universe was confirming what we already knew, that what had started in that chemistry lab was worth building a future around. Looking back now, 5 years later, as I complete my residency and Alex establishes a research career, I'm struck by how a simple offer of academic help transformed both our lives. What began as "let me show you how to understand this reaction mechanism" evolved into "let me share my life with you." I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't knocked over those test tubes that day in lab, or if Alex hadn't offered extra help, or if I had been too proud to accept it. So many small decisions led to where we are now, sharing an apartment, planning our future, building a life together that neither of us could have imagined when we were just student and TA. The lesson I take from our story isn't just about finding love in unexpected places. It's about being open to connections, about allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to ask for help when you need it, and about recognizing that sometimes the most important chemistry isn't happening in the lab, but in the quiet moments between two people who are slowly, carefully discovering each other. For anyone navigating the complicated territories of identity, education, and relationships, I offer this. Trust your instincts, respect appropriate boundaries, but don't let fear prevent you from exploring connections that feel meaningful. Sometimes the most significant experiments are the ones we conduct with our hearts, and the most valuable discoveries are the people who help us understand ourselves better. Alex and I still laugh about that first awkward study session and how neither of us could have predicted where it would lead. We've kept the molecular model kit from our tutoring days as a reminder of our beginning. It sits on our bookshelf now, a plastic representation of the bonds that can form between atoms and people when the conditions are just right. And sometimes, when I'm struggling with a particularly difficult case at the hospital, I hear Alex's voice in my head, patiently explaining. It's really a lot like cooking. There are basic principles, and once you understand those, you can predict how things will behave. It turns out that lesson applies to much more than just chemistry. Total _char_count, 17,813.